I'm Reisigo and I'm attempting to complete every single GameCube game, but I'm randomizing what game I'm playing next. In this episode, we're playing through a Sonic racing game in Sonic Riders. So let's see how Sonic Riders is in 2024. Sonic Riders was released on February 21st, 2006 and was developed by the Sonic team and published by Sega. Sonic Riders is a racing game that has Sonic characters racing around on hoverboards. When we start up the game, we get this very cool cartoon-like opening of all the characters in the game racing around. This immediately reminded me of something that would be on a Saturday morning when I was a child, like some sort of cartoon. It has that 90s vibe to it, and the music during this part is very good as well. Once that cutscene is over, we're treated with the menu, and for this game, we're going to go through the story mode to consider this one complete. We only have access to the hero's story at this point, but if this video gets 20 likes, I'll go through the second story campaign. So make sure you hit that like button. Before each race, we get a little cutscene. Some of them focus on Sonic and his friends, and some focus on the Babylon Rogues. The leader of the Babylon Rogues is Jet, and he's the reason that the plot of this game exists. He has the key to the Babylon Garden, an artifact that is said to unlock the secrets of their ancestors, but he's not sure how to get the Babylon Garden to appear. Dr. Eggman shows up and tells him that he can use Chaos Emeralds to make the Babylon Garden rise up out of the ground. The Rogues agree to steal an emerald, but run into Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, who are looking for the emerald themselves. They chase after Jet, but are unable to catch him. The next day, Dr. Eggman announces an extreme gear race known as the EX World Grand Prix. Participants must offer a Chaos Emerald to enter, but the winner will be awarded all 7 of them. Sonic doesn't think much of this until he notices that the Rogues are participating in it, and then Sonic and his friends decide to join. This gets us up to the first race of the game. Sonic must win this race to qualify to the next round of the Grand Prix. In this race, we have to finish in the top 3 to complete the mission, and this one takes place in Metal City. This is just a futuristic city that we're racing through. It's what the first cutscene looked like, large buildings everywhere, cars, and a bunch of advertisements. It's a simple track, but it makes sense because this is the first race of the story mode. If you don't know, this game is a racing game where we compete with 7 other racers in 3-lap races while using hoverboards, or mentioned in the story what they call extreme gear. This allows for us to travel at insane speeds, grind rails, jump, and even surf energy waves during the race. I won't lie though, it took me a while to get decent at this game. The timing for some of the mechanics are just odd to me, especially the grinding. I just couldn't get the timing down and I would always miss the rails. This means that the CPU would take the shorter paths, but I would always have to go the long way. This ended up being pretty annoying and caused me to have to redo a bunch of races because I just couldn't keep up. There are a few things to point out while racing. We can collect rings on the track, and there's even items that have rings inside of them. As you collect rings, the more you get will eventually upgrade our gear during the race, letting us boost for longer. We'll have a faster overall speed, and it just gives us an advantage in the race. However, if you fall off the track, then we go all the way back to level 1 of the gear. The boost meter that makes us go faster is on the right side of the screen, and we only have so much of this at any given time. We can earn boost by hitting tricks on the waves or ramps during the track, or these sections where we don't have control of our character, but we just spin the analog stick to regain some boost. If you run out of the boost completely, we have to run on the ground until our gear charges enough so that we can ride our hoverboard again. This will basically cause you to lose the race, so if this happens, you might just want to restart the race altogether. Anyways, we're able to get a very close first place on this race and complete the first race of the game. Once the race is over, the game will show us our finishing times, what position we came in, and how many rings we finished the race with. None of these are super important because this race doesn't affect the next race when it comes to story mode. So basically we just have missions we need to complete, and once we do, we finish the story mode of the game. So that's what we're going to do heading forward. Since these races don't matter all that much because it's just the same thing over and over again, I'll talk about the tracks a bit and then cover how we finished, but mainly we're going to talk about the story moments. But I'll show a little bit of the races at least. Alright, let's move on to the next cutscene of the game. This cutscene starts with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles walking on a bridge by a waterfall. Amy shows up to come see Sonic and his friends. Sonic seems to be annoyed by this. After talking to her for a minute, Tails gives us the background of the Babylon Rogues and how they're rumored to be extreme gear specialists, but because they were thieves, they ended up cursed. This shows like a wall painting while he's talking about this, and when it comes back to us, Wave the Swallow is standing there. She mocks us about our gear being junk, which is a stab at Tails because he's the one that modified the gear. This makes Tails angry, but before he can show it, there is an announcement that the next race is taking place. We get to use Tails in this race, and we have to finish in the top 3 again, and then we can move on to the next mission. This race takes place on Splash Canyon, a race that takes place in the mountains, but follows a river for most of the race. We even get to jump down a massive waterfall during the race and go through this cave. Tails is a different type of racer. Each racer has a type. Sonic and Jet are both speed types. Wave and Tails are flight types, and the last type is power type. Speed types are the most basic because they only get the ability to grind rails, and they're generally just faster than the other types. Flight types have the ability to fly, jump further, and even levitate at times. And the last is the power type. These specialize in strength and physical combat. With this type, we can smash through objects and even barricades. Each one can be good, but I prefer the grinding ability, so I really like the speed type characters. I struggled with this race, and I had to do this race a bunch of times. We finally got a second place finish, which allows us to move on to the next race of the game though. The flight type racers are the ones that I struggle with, because they can't just get up and go like the speed types. Anyways, once we finish this race, we get a new cutscene. This cutscene follows Knuckles as he's walking through some factory with lava everywhere. I have no clue what we're doing there, but as Knuckles comes around the corner, he bumps into Storm the Albatross. He's part of the Babylon Rogues. He's the powerhouse of the team, but he's a bit dim-witted. I actually like him as a character quite a bit though. After running into each other, they start yelling at each other, and then Knuckles goes to punch Storm, but ends up hitting this random robot that just happens to be there. This makes Knuckles catch him, and then Storm ends up throwing a punch. Knuckles moves out of the way, and Storm hits the robot, and he ends up breaking it. I felt so bad for this little robot. He did nothing wrong, he was just there. The announcement goes off for the next race, and they decide to settle the score on the track. We have to beat Storm in this race and get first place. This race takes place in Egg Factory, a big factory that was built in the core of the earth or something. There is lava everywhere, and we're racing on like gates instead of road or water. This race is a pretty simple one, but I wanted to point out that with Knuckles, I was just hitting all the other racers as they tried to pass me. This was the way to win the race. I guess this was racing dirty, but overall I think it was just a good strategy, because I was able to win this one on my very first try. We even beat Storm by a full 2 seconds on this race, and I felt great about it. I was starting to get a bit better at this game, or so I thought anyways. The next cutscene doesn't have much going on. Sonic is trying to get better on the extreme gear. Jet shows up and tells him that without wings, he can never hope to beat him, and then tells him that his gear is junk. Tails agrees, but Sonic tells him it's fine, he's doing a great job. Tails vows to figure out how to master the gear and make it 100%. Then this throws us into another race using Tails, but this time we have to race against Wave and get first place. The next race is on Green Cave, a race that goes through some giant trees and caves, and we have to avoid massive bugs. The track is a decent one, but this one took me forever to win. When I tell you that this took me around 8 to 10 tries to get first place, I wouldn't even be lying. I could race well the whole race, but still lose to Wave at the end. There was some sort of shortcut that she was taking that I couldn't figure out. But on this attempt, I was able to lead early. I didn't make any mistakes, letting me get a first place finish. I was so happy to finally get this one done. I do really like that in this race, we get to ride on a giant centipede when we restore our boost. That is pretty cool. And to point out how close this race was, we only won this race by 0.07 seconds. This was by far the hardest race in the game for me. The next cutscene shows us in the final area of the Grand Prix. We've made it to the final race. Sonic is the best competitor out of our group, so he takes his Chaos Emerald up to the stand, and Jet meets him up there. He tells us that we only got there because of being lucky, and it had nothing to do with our skill because we don't have any. He's kind of a jerk in this cutscene. And then we place our Chaos Emerald and we're ready to start the final race for a chance to win the Chaos Emeralds. This next race takes place on a course called Sand Runes, a massive desert area that has us jumping over sand mounds and going through some old ruins as we race back to the finish line. This was another challenging one for me. I couldn't figure out the timing so that we could grind, making the first handful of attempts feel like I had no chance of winning. I would also fall off quite a bit, and that doesn't help anything either. I like the course overall, but I think if I was just better at this game, I could have gotten this one in 2 to 3 tries. We get shot out of this old cannon thing during the lap. It reminds me of a bow or something when it sets us up before shooting us back to the finish line. On the last lap, before we finish the race, if you're in first place and are getting close to the finish line, we get a cutscene. During this cutscene, it shows Sonic and Jet battling for first place. Sonic takes the lead, but Wave sets off the explosive that she put on the bottom of our board all that time back on the bridge when we met her. This causes us to crash, and Jet is able to cross first and win the Grand Prix. Jet heads up to the area with all the Chaos Emeralds and uses the Key of Babylon on them. This triggers a better rendered cutscene where the emeralds activate the key and the Babylon Garden comes out of the sand. Jet is stoked that the Babylon Garden appeared when Dr. Eggman steals the key out of his hand and takes his plane thing and flies off. Amy grabs onto the back of it, and then Sonic jumps into action and tells Knuckles and Tails that they need to go after Eggman. Another cutscene takes place and Sonic and friends are flying on a little plane, and Jet and his team are in an airship trying to catch Eggman. They find him and he's riding a little motorcycle now. I don't know why the change, but it's time for Sonic to jump into action. Before he leaps off the airplane, Tails gives him a newly upgraded Extreme Gear hoverboard and tells him to use it. Sonic catches it and jumps down to the area with Eggman. But when he lands, Jet lands right next to Sonic and tells him that he's not fast enough to catch him, and they both end up racing off. On to the final mission of the game. We have to beat Jet in a race once and for all. The last course for this story mode is called Babylon Garden. This course is really cool, but this mission was very difficult. Jet is super fast and there are some tight corners during the laps. Most of the race is on what looks like Old Stone Road, but there are rails we can grind and a lot of airwaves that we can jump up and down on. There's even split paths that are designed for each type of racer. We need to find the right path for Sonic or we will lose a bunch of time. When charging our booster, we get to ride on a jet for some reason. It looks like a ship from Star Fox, but that's just my opinion. Maybe this has something to do with Sonic lore. After a bunch of attempts, I was able to finally get a good run and finish this race. We did really good too because we beat Jet by 3 seconds, which is a ton in Sonic Riders. I was so happy about this. We get one more cutscene. This shows Sonic winning the race, telling Jet that even without wings he can fly, and then Sonic catches up to Eggman, but Eggman is holding Amy hostage. Ooh. Sonic decides to jump the hoverboard into the air and dive into Eggman, causing him and Amy to fly into the air. Sonic then grabs the key to Babylon and gives it back to Jet. Jet tells Sonic he doesn't want the key just because Sonic is pitying him. Then Wave grabs it and says treasure's treasure, and they all walk away. Sonic tells his friends it's time to go home, and then Amy yells his name. She's fuming about the fact that Sonic would air dive into Eggman, knowing that she was there, and then she chases him around with a mallet. That ends the cutscene, and we get our credits for finishing Sonic Riders. After the credits, we unlock so much stuff. We get the Babylon track, new missions, new characters Cream, Rouge, and Shadow, new Extreme Gear, and the Babylon story mode. I mentioned it at the beginning of this video, but if this video gets 20 likes, we will do the other story mode. We finished Sonic Riders, and we completed another game for our challenge. Would I recommend this game? I think I would recommend this game. The racing is fun once you understand how it works. The story mode is short, but it gives you an idea of what's happening in the world at that time. And it even tells us why we're using Extreme Gear in the first place. I really like the track designs and some of the gear is pretty cool looking. So I think overall this was a positive experience for me. But let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you want to know what game we're playing next, stick around. But if not, thanks for watching. And remember to check out the last GameCube game that we completed in our challenge that's on the screen now. If you made it this far, make sure to subscribe to the channel because it helps me out. Like and share this video so that we can get more eyes on this challenge. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. We got our game list of 507. And then we have our number generator. So on the count of 3, we are going to find out what we are playing next. So 3, 2, 1. 386, which is Sonic Gems Collection. We got another Sonic game back to back.